I'm here at my favorite local park. I come here walking as often as I can, and today I wanted to do a little bit of walking and a little bit of reading, and I am going to start reading in earnest The Door on the Sea by Caskey Russell. This is going to be a bit of a reading vlog. I'm gonna tell you what the book is about at the beginning, then I'll start reading, and I'll have some updates along the way, and then I might intersperse some live reactions in the moment. I've been excited to read this book ever since I heard about it. It is by a Tlingit author, Caskey Russell, and it is based on bedtime stories that he would tell his kids. And it is a Tlingit and Lord of the Rings inspired story, which I just can't tell you how excited I am to read. And I love that in the spirit of Tolkien having told The Hobbit as bedtime stories to his son Christopher, that this book has come from bedtime stories for his kids. So this book is about a young man named Elon. His home and people are being attacked by these shapeshifters known as the Koosh. One day, Elon, with a big gust of wind, accidentally traps a raven in his cupboard, and then he has to journey with that raven and a few other members of his tribe to try and find something that will stop the Koosh from attacking them. I've already read the first chapter of this. I read it during the TBR Harvest reading vlog to get a reaction to the first chapter, and I ended up reading other books instead where I liked the first chapters more, but I did still really like the first chapter of this one, and I like the conversational oral storytelling voice that it has. And I also mentioned that I liked the similarity to The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. I will see as I continue reading this whether or not that voice is going to continue. I haven't really been able to tell from advanced reviews. I think maybe one or two mentioned this, but I'm going to be on the lookout to see if there are any female characters in this book, because I think that is something that you can really easily improve on in Tolkien's writing, is just including more women. But so far I only know about Elon and the Raven as characters. So I'm going to get started on this, and I will update you with my thoughts when I'm about a third of the way in. So this keeps cracking me up. There's a place name in here called Yelm, which is a town in Washington that I've been to. There's probably a meaning for it in a local indigenous language, but it just cracks me up. Like, Yelm? I know where that is. I can go there. Quick update, I'm on page 101. We've just introduced 2 more people to the party, so there are now 5 people in the party. All of them are men. Really hoping that a woman shows up soon. I think that one woman had a line early in the book, and then another woman didn't get dialogue until page 74. So I'm on women watch. I'm looking out for them. And then I just had to update here because it just keeps cracking me up. There keep being like Washington State place names. They're passing a place called Point No Point, which is a place in Washington. It's actually not too far from here. So that and Yelm, they keep saying Yelm, and it's so funny to me because Yelm is not a super glamorous place. And so it's like, the fantasy town of Yelm. But I will tell you more of my in-depth thoughts on my third of the way update. Just hit the 33% mark of The Door on the Sea. A woman has finally joined the party, but she's only been part of it for 1 chapter, so we don't know a lot about her. She seems quite grumpy that she's going on this quest, and the captain is a very inexperienced 18-year-old boy, and you know what? Absolutely valid. absolutely valid. Why is he in charge? There is a reason for it, but I think it's a little flimsy, personally. There are a lot of characters, like, in the party, as I said, but we don't really know a lot about them or their personalities. We know, like, one fact about each of them and kind of what their experience is, but we haven't had a lot of banter or interaction between all of them. Everyone seems very professional, but they're not showing a lot of their personality in their actions or their dialogue. There is a kind of omniscient third person narrator, and it's this storyteller who's kind of making asides to the reader every now and then, but kind of because of that writing style, we're not really getting a lot of the inner thoughts or feelings of a lot of characters, even Elan, the main character. Although there are so many descriptions about how to sail a canoe, I feel like I've taken a crash course now and I could probably figure it out based on how often that's been explained. But the descriptions of the islands and the plants and animals feel very familiar. It's based on a region of the world that I've grown up in, and so many of the islands and beaches that I've grown up visiting are very, very similar to what's being described. So I'm picturing everything like it's Hood Canal or Whidbey Island with the rocky beaches and the fir trees hanging over the beaches. So it feels very Salish Sea and the Northwest Coast. And so I'm liking that aspect of it. It does feel like it's very much written for a kind of Pacific Northwest audience, or rather it's written for everyone, but people from the Pacific Northwest are kind of like in on it to some extent. That being said though, I do wish there was a map. The geography has been a little bit confusing where it seems like there is one main island. There's also a mainland that gets referred to, but I think they're on one kind of big main island that's divided by mountains. But then they keep talking about all these other little islands that they're passing while they're sailing. So I think they've come from the West Island around to the East Island and then surrounding the big island are all of these small islands, but it's not super clear, and I think it would be way clearer with a map. Also, going by the fantasy conventions that this book is in conversation with, I feel like a map would be absolutely appropriate. Because this is stated to be kind of a Tlingit response to Lord of the Rings, I am mapping the Lord of the Rings kind of onto this. There's even like a significant coat of mail that Elan is given from his grandfather, and I can kind of see like they're going after this Kush weapon that they're trying to find, and that's the ring. It's the enemy's weapon that they're trying to use. Elan is kind of the inexperienced Frodo. He's surrounded by these warriors that are there to help him, and they recently stayed at an inn, sort of like the Prancing Pony, and picked someone else up for the party there. And so there is a woman in the party, but she's been the only significant woman so far, so we'll see if there's more. I'm still on woman watch. And that lack of female characters is especially frustrating because there's no in-universe reason for it. It's stated that men and women can be warriors, and this female character is an experienced warrior. And so the fact that there just haven't been any women so far, except for this woman Qua and Elan's mom, is sort of like, why are the women being kept from me? It seems like an egalitarian society, at least where it comes to gender, so why are the only characters that we're seeing and that have speaking roles male? I think that one of the themes of this book is going to be questioning tradition and questioning why we do things the way that we do. And then also, Elan's dream is to be a warrior. He's been trained as a book learner, and he has talent as a storyteller, but he's excited to go on this adventure. He wants to have an adventure like his grandfather and be a warrior. And his society, although they don't go to war, are very focused on war, and the warriors are revered and kind of more important in society. So I hope that Elan learns to value his own strengths as a storyteller and not be chasing so much the thing that everyone else in his society is chasing. And that he can sort of question even that part of society and question the ways that it has worked on him internally, and that he can value the parts of him that are not warrior-like. So far, the danger and tension has not felt super present. It seems like they've had several months to prepare. We've only seen one example of them being in danger and they were able to escape. So I want there to be more of that present danger and tension and kind of getting us on a ticking clock. And we just haven't really seen any of the Koosh yet. We've only gotten descriptions of them from the Raven. There haven't been any like Nazgul attacks, just, as an example. And so we don't really have this urgency yet in the story, and we don't really know how everyone's going to react to that danger. Everything's just been like, okay, we're stating the plan that we're going to do, and then it's a description of them doing the plan, which is just a little bit repetitive, and some of the sentence structure is like, they did this thing, they did this thing, they did this thing, then they did this thing. So I want there to be a little bit more embellishment, and I don't want the story to just be stating what happens. I want there to be a bit more interiority, a bit more description of what's going on around them, and I want there to be a bit more of that like creeping urgency and tension as the story goes on. I mentioned the Raven before, and I've seen in people's reviews that he's a big turnoff, and I can absolutely see why. He's just such a stupid character. He is always insulting people, and he has a lot of toilet humor, and I think that that might be a remnant of this originally being a bedtime story for children. This is definitely like a child-friendly character, like to make your kids giggle while you're telling them this story, but he's hard to read about. So going forward into the next third of the book, because I'm going to give you an update 2/3 of the way through, I am looking forward to seeing a little bit more action, a little bit more development from the characters and development of the relationship between the characters, and maybe more women, we'll see. There are already so many characters, I kind of want to develop the ones that we already have, and even if that means there's only one major female character. All right, I'm going to get back to this, and like I said, I will update you in a little while. I've only got a few minutes left before I need to leave for D&D, but I wanted to give you my 2/3 of the way update of The Door on the Sea. Just got to the 2/3 mark, so that is page 265 in my copy. And it's getting harder to talk about the book without spoilers. I feel like I don't have as much to talk about this time, though. I'm kind of having trouble connecting with the characters still. Elan is saying that he is starting to feel more connected to his traveling companions and they're turning into his friends, and I can see that, but I also feel like I'm just at a bit of a remove. I'm still not getting a lot of the characterization that I'm looking for. We have gone to some really cool locations, and there have been some ups and downs and back and forths in the plot of things that they've lost and things that they've gained. They are finally at their destination now, so it's kind of the perfect time to end because it feels like the third act is about to start. The female character in the party, Kwa, she is a trained warrior and is very doubtful about Elan as the leader and is kind of causing the most conflict of any of the party members. But Elan acknowledges that she's in a very difficult position. I think that she's entirely justified, but the book sort of frames her as being difficult. But now that she's warmed up to Elan, she is friendlier. And something that I like about this book is that everyone in it is super competent. They all know how to sail, they know how to hunt and fish and repair a boat and sew a sail. Everyone has kind of the same base level of knowledge that's expected in their culture, and then they learn different things on top of that, like Elan studying to be a teacher, and then the warriors studying to be warriors, but they all know how to kind of do basic things. So all of them have that competency that I always love to see in book characters. I'm struggling to have more to say about it than that now that we've gotten into a bit of a rhythm with the journey. It feels like things are progressing kind of expectedly, like there haven't been any real big twists or turns, and the character arcs are kind of proceeding well. Elan's character arc is anyway. No one else is really having an arc. They're all staying flat. Aside from Kwa, who is changing somewhat over the course of the book, but everyone else is, yeah, like I said, remaining flat. But since things are about to develop and I don't know what's gonna come next now that they're at their destination, I'm curious to see what's going to happen, and I just want there to be a little bit more danger and unexpectedness of just not knowing what's going to come next. I mean, they're at where they wanted to go, but we are only a third of the way through, so I think that some unexpected things are definitely going to happen. And we still don't know what the door on the sea is. Actually, now that I'm saying that, I do have an idea of what it could be, but we haven't actually seen anything resembling that yet. Those are all of my thoughts. I need to go get ready for D&D, and I will update you once I finish the book. We're out of olives. Okay, let's talk about The Door on the Sea. When I last updated you, we were 2/3 of the way through. Circumstances were seemingly about to change. Friends, I felt nothing. I felt nothing for this book. It was giving nothing. The only thing I felt by the end of it was frustration, because just it wasn't giving me really anything to work with. Literally, they do the plan that they're trying to do, and I'll get to this more when I do a spoiler section, but they go to get the MacGuffin, and then they turn around and come back. And that's the plot of the book. Now, I'll admit, some of my favorite books are they go to get the MacGuffin and they get it and they turn around and come back. But in those books, other things happen along the way, and like we don't end up with the same people that we started with, and there's some twists and turns. There was very little of that. There were just so few surprises in this book where like you could have cut out a good 50 pages of people saying they were gonna do something and then the description of them doing the thing. And that's what the book is they have a plan and they execute the plan. And not in a fun like heist story way, because in a heist story there's complications and they have to like improvise. I'm reading Thieves' Gambit by Kavion Lewis, which is great and I'm loving it, and I love a heist story. As I was reading the last third of the book, I wrote down in my notes, it's just descriptions of people doing and saying things. And yeah, like there's no embellishment, very few like inner monologue or descriptions of what characters are feeling, or even like the expressions that characters are wearing. There's a point at the end where Elan has a conversation with a member of his party who's from his like childhood village, and it should have happened like chapter 6, and it happens like one of the last chapters of the book, and that character was there in the plot why. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't fulfill any type of thing. He doesn't really have any big conversations with Elan except for this one at the end, which, like, why? Too little, too late. And Elan, the main character, the character whose head we're in, I mean, it does a tiny bit of head hopping at the beginning, but that, like, ends the further we get into the book. He doesn't ever earn his, like, main character status. And forgive me for comparing this book to Lord of the Rings, but it was marketed as a comparison to Lord of the Rings and a response to Lord of the Rings. And so naturally you're going to compare Elan with Frodo. Frodo is not the most active character. I mean, he definitely does the things that he set out to do, and he's a mover upon the plot. But because of the influence of the ring, he becomes kind of a passive character. But crucially, he's not a chosen one. He has the ring at the beginning, but by the Council of Elrond, he says, I will take the ring to Mordor, and that's not a given. No one else was going to volunteer to do it, but Frodo stepped up and did, and that changed the course of his life and the course of the story. In this book, Elan is just the chosen one, and for why? I think at this point I have to talk about spoilers when I'm talking about Elan's character, so I'll just talk about all my spoilers now, and then I'll put a timestamp down at the bottom for when I stop talking about them. There's a moment where Elan is temporarily captured by the Koosh, the bad guys from another, like, plane of existence. You would think that there would be some tension of, like, oh no, he's been captured, is he gonna get, like, taken back to the mainland? No, he escapes easily. But there's a moment where the Koosh is talking to him, and there's some ambiguity and, like, some sequel bait of, like, this guy says that he's Elan's grandfather somehow, and that's not really explained yet. But Elan has the Zonti at this point, the Koosh weapon, and that's another thing that I'll get into later. And the Koosh says, if you come back to the door to our world, I will cure you of your headaches and your nearsightedness. Friends, I'd forgotten that Elan had headaches. It's mentioned sometimes that he's nearsighted, that the horizon is blurry, but it doesn't seem to really impact him at all. He never has a headache in the book that leads to him falling asleep on watch, or really a flaw that is, you know, brought up at all in the story that is, like, debilitating or in any way inconveniences him throughout. I literally forgot that he had headaches. I think it's mentioned once in the beginning. And Elan agrees. He agrees to go with the Koosh because, man, it sure would be nice for my, you know, eyesight to be better and my headaches. Bitch, when? When was that an inconvenience for you at any point in this journey? This could have been a big moment that his character is building towards, where he's offered a temptation that is really appealing to him, but it's not a big moment, it's a stupid moment. And then, the Zonti. What if we use the One Ring to blow people up? There's a point where they are fighting the Koosh, and they do fine, no one's in danger, and Elan shoots a few people who've been enslaved who are fighting for the Koosh, and he goes through this whole, like, chapter-long rigmarole where he makes this oath to, and I quote, "Not to purposefully seek to kill another human, I will not kill without meaning." But once he gets the MacGuffin plot weapon, he's smiting people with lightning bolts right and left. Not once after he gets this weapon thinks about that oath at all. And there are some moments where he's like, oh no, I don't want to blow up people, but, like, that's not really a real consideration. The oath is not brought up again. This book is so wishy-washy about its themes, you'd think it would be talking with the same themes as Lord of the Rings and trying to refute some of the themes of Lord of the Rings. Go deeper into them or refute some of the conclusions that Tolkien comes to, especially when it comes to everyone in Middle-earth being, you know, white, and then this, like, specter of the other end of the swarthy orcs from, you know, the east, from Mordor, and the people from the east bowing down to Sauron. But instead, it's What if we kept the One Ring and blew people up with it? And the theme of like tradition and how do we make new traditions and why don't we question traditions just comes up like when the author remembers it. I think it's more like a fun philosophical discussion that the characters have, nothing that like a part of the plot leads towards or something that the characters really have to wrestle with. I mean, they do to some extent, but it really feels like it's only brought up when the author's like, oh yeah, that's the theme of the book. But it's not the theme of the book. I really didn't want to be this upset about this book, but as I was reading it last night, I was getting just more and more frustrated, and I was, I've been listening to audiobooks at the same time that I've been reading this, and I'm going, oh yeah, books can make me feel things. Unlike this one, which, as I said, gave me nothing. But everyone talked the same, despite some of them being from different cultures or backgrounds. The world felt flat and unlived in. There were nods towards past events and different peoples around the islands, but it didn't have that like connectedness that really well done world building has. Oh, real quick spoiler because I forgot to include it because I'm having a martini. I mean, this is just hinted at towards the end, but I can smell a hetero plot tumor a mile away. Is the only female character gonna be the love interest? Are we seriously doing that? Aside from those gripes, I feel like I really don't have much more to say than this because, like, the plot is really, like, extremely linear and predictable. It's not even predictable, it's like they tell you how the plot is gonna happen and then the plot happens. The only time that the book is exciting is when they're in any sort of peril or it deviates from the prescribed plan at all. This is one of my most anticipated books of the year. I said at the beginning of this video that it had an absolutely banging premise, but unfortunately, the beauty of books and the reasons that we love them are in the execution, not just a good premise. Unfortunately, I'm going to rate this book 2.75 stars. That is going to be all for me today. I keep forgetting to do this, but please like and subscribe and comment if you liked this video. Hopefully, I will have more enjoyment with the books that I read in the next video, and I will see you then.